Hey everyone, this is Steve Good, and welcome to our next episode of the Coin Chat. Joined again by my good friend Yuri Cataldo. Yuri, how are you today?
I'm doing quite well. Had a slight computer issue this morning, but things are back on track, and it's always, as always, it's good to chat with you.
And I don't mind if your microphone's not working and you just do it by dial-in. It all sounds good anyway.
Right. Well, my voice is quite enticing. So,
oh, it is.
It's
that
way.
Radio voice that we all are dying to hear every Thursday on the podcast.
Exactly. Have to get the people what they want, and it's more of my voice, whether it's coming through on my crystal clear microphone or like today's a little more back-end call-in method. Either way, I'm in and we're chatting, and cool. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and today we're going to talk about some of the latest news about companies that are, let's say, the bigger name companies that are now suddenly jumping into crypto, and maybe even some lesser known names. I think you told me there was something a little bit more on the fringes of the XXX that we might want to talk about today as well.
Yes, there's a couple of less known companies and the fringes of the XXX, which are doing some very interesting and exciting work that's going to change what's happening in that industry as well.
Well, I don't mind starting with the first fringe one, which is kind of interesting, but Australia's airport in Brisbane announced that they're going to start rolling out Bitcoin payments across the terminal for shopping and dining facilities.
Oh, that's great. Did they go into detail about how they're going to do that and make that easy?
There is an article I've seen. It's up on CoinDesk that was out, when was it? The 26th of January. So I am sure if people wanted to look that up, they could find it on CoinDesk, 26th of Jan. It's a pretty high level, very, very short little announcement that just says that they're just trying to make it easier for people to use crypto and Bitcoin in particular at the airport. So okay. I just thought that was interesting. So Brisbane in Australia, hurrah. Now you can go fly to Australia to do shopping and use your Bitcoins. I mean, that's got to be easier than all the travel I've done recently where I've not been able to spend anything at the airports, including big ones like Abu Dhabi, Mumbai, New York. Just been a disaster. None of them are even close. So, well done, Australia.
I had my own, right? I had my own, as we talked about before, my own minor experience with Delta, and it's great that at least somebody somewhere is embracing this and realizing it's an actual thing that people want to do. So you should give the people what they want.
Yeah. So on the whole travel thing, interestingly enough, so Singapore Airlines announced that they're going to take their loyalty program, which is called the Kris Flyer program, and they're actually implementing that into a blockchain. They've been actually trialing it for about 6 months as well, and they're doing it so that they're going to provide you like some sort of a digital wallet that will store your points from flying that you can then use for shopping.
Oh, great.
So definitely they're trying to, encourage people to fly with them, to collect, air mile points with the Singapore Airlines Kris Flyer program. And then they're giving you, instead of giving you like a frequent flyer, app, I guess they're effectively going to give you some sort of a frequent flyer wallet where you can store your coins rather than your points. So I think that's actually pretty cool, and it's certainly innovative for the airlines. And it's good to see that, a big airline like Singapore Airlines is doing it. And, albeit Singapore is a very friendly country when it comes to crypto, and we've certainly seen a lot of crypto companies launching into Singapore. So it's good to see that, the actual airlines themselves have jumped into it. I think that's really cool.
Mm-hmm. There we go. So with other question I have is, because you brought up your own travel, have you, I don't want to derail everything, but have you tried to buy anything recently with Bitcoin?
Oh, yeah, that's true. We didn't talk about that yet. So actually, the other day I went to the Apple store to go and buy another iPad because I had to replace one. And I said, so, look, I'd really love to buy this with, cash and all that, but just curious, could I buy it with Bitcoin? And this guy was really cool. He says to me, oh my God, this is such a great idea. He said, no. He said, Apple has no plans for this. It's a shame. He said, but you know what they should do? And I said, what's that? He said they should be integrating it with their Apple Pay so that you could walk in and use Apple Pay and just, use your Bitcoin with the Apple Pay. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. He said, yeah, he said, it's just they're not there yet. So Tim Cook, if you're listening, and Apple, anybody out there listening, your employees are suggesting it. So maybe it's time to get on the Bitcoin wagon and start helping us to make it easy to spend the money.
So yes, Apple definitely should embrace it. On top of the fact that they're usually on the cutting edge of some things. But if you think about it, how many more people would jump into that and just purchase more Apple products just because they could do it with cryptocurrency? Well, I think they'd have a huge sales spike instantly.
Well, here's the interesting thing for me is like Apple Pay has kind of been, dare I say, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, but kind of been an epic fail for me because, it's really hard to get the bank credit cards or cash cards to be the right ones to use with their platform. And although I know it's been somewhat successful in the US, certainly in the UK, it's been really, really hard to use. And what's really interesting is that, if you look at all these Stripe and Apple Pay and, PayPal and all these other platforms that are out there that are sort of like, here, let me send you money from me to you. And Apple Pay kind of falls in that same space a little bit, except for that you can go into a cash point and you can use your phone to pay for something. It kind of makes me wonder, why not just take it to the next level and just implement it as crypto and just skip all the banking stuff and just let people use their crypto wallets to pay directly and integrate a wallet onto the phone? Because it strikes me that they've got some really cool technology actually built into the phone, on the Apple phones in particular, for encrypting data in some of the chips. They've got some chips, like stuff that's not even being used and leveraged very well, that could be where you could just store a wallet and be able to spend the money right from the wallet straight on your phone, straight out. I mean, there's just a lot of things I would have thought they'd start thinking about, but there's been, absolute silence from them. Frankly, silence from Google and the whole Android space too. So I just feel like they're missing a trick here on this one.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like, and maybe it's just because I read a bunch of random blogs, that Amazon may be the first one to actually jump into this space.
Yeah, they've certainly
kind of recognize it.
They've hinted at it because they've bought some URLs some time ago, which we talked about in a previous episode. And I think there's a lot of speculation that Amazon will be one of the first to jump in. But then on the other hand, there's a lot of these crypto companies that I'm beginning to see are starting to mature a little bit. Not many, but there's a few that have been around for, almost a year already, building their products, starting to launch things. And sooner or later, someone's going to take notice and say, you know what, this work's already been done. Let's just acquire them. It's going to be easier. I kind of feel like 6 to 9 months from now, we're going to be having a different conversation about, did you hear about this one being acquired by Google and this one by Apple and this one by Amazon and this one by Virgin, Media or whatever. I kind of feel like we're heading down that path. And, 6 to 9 months from now, we're going to be having very different conversations about how things have transformed.
Oh, definitely. Are there, since you're tapped into this industry, are there any particular companies that you're more excited about and think that maybe they are leading the way in one way or another?
It's a difficult question because there's a lot of different industries and a lot of different sectors. Now, of course, I'm invested in some of them, so I have to be, with full disclosure, there are companies I'm invested in, so I wouldn't want to be recommending them because I own some of the coins. So I'll just say for now that there are, I think, a variety of different things I've seen across the energy sector, across financial services for cards and payments or insurance or loans. I've seen some really interesting things in healthcare, around patient management records and that, doing that in the blockchain. So I'll just say that there's different examples I've seen like those, which I find to be really, really interesting. And I'm sure that, our listeners would have tons of other ideas they could throw our way and share with us about things that they've been seeing. So, there's a lot of really interesting ideas. What it comes down to, for me, is whether these companies can take these great ideas and execute and actually deliver. And, the problem with startups is that oftentimes, you've got the statistic about 1 in 10 typically makes it and the other 9 just don't survive. I would like to hope the statistics are better than that for crypto, but that's just generally what happens with startups is a lot of them just don't make it. So, I hope these good ideas aren't just good ideas, but actually get, delivered well. And that's the difficulty for me is not knowing which ones of these will actually make it.
Oh, sure. So along with that, I know, and we've already talked about Singapore, but other larger corporations who didn't start off in blockchain are also introducing it. And Kodak made a bunch of news about that. What are your thoughts on Kodak?
Kodak, actually, it's, a lot of people were kind of negative about it, but I did a little bit of research, and here's what I found. What they're doing is they're kind of going after the whole, stock photography market space with blockchain. And it's all about digital rights management for photographers to protect their own photos. So if you take a photo and whether you're professional or amateur, but you want to protect the rights on those images, you can load them into the Kodak blockchain so that the ownership of those images becomes immutable or unchangeable. They are your photos and you own the rights to them, and therefore you can sell, access to those photos under the various digital rights that are out there. I think it's pretty interesting and, pretty innovative. I don't know where it's going to go, but I think Kodak's onto something. I mean, sure, they could just, do what Flickr does and store it in a database, but maybe there's something to be said about doing it in the blockchain, and I think we just need to kind of monitor and see how they progress. But I like the idea of digital rights on the blockchain. I think it's a really, really cool concept. And we've seen, smaller startup companies in the blockchain world like, for example, Music Coin that helps with artists to manage their futures, or there's Jet Coin that manages up and coming talent in sports. So there's lots of different examples out there of things like that. But I like the idea of Kodak being an established company jumping into the same kind of space, but having a track record and credibility in the industry. So I find that interesting. I don't know where that'll go, but I want to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, I like what they're doing in it. Well, it seems, and especially at the time, there were a couple of companies who just seemed to just throw out blockchain and then watch their stock rise. Kodak seems to be the one that's actually doing something with it. There is I don't know if you've heard about this, but there was the Long Island iced tea company who
step back. What is the Long Island iced tea company?
Well, they make Long Island iced tea. They're a beverage company. And so what happened was, like, in December, also, I think it was around the same time that Kodak decided to implement blockchain and watch their stock rise. So this company was almost delisted off of the exchange, and they changed their name to the Long Blockchain Corporation. And so, like, their stock was down at like penny stock level, jumps from $1.60 to almost $7 overnight.
Really?
And yeah, and that was 6 weeks ago. So they came out with a statement last week about how they actually have no idea what they're doing in the blockchain stuff. And part of what their original idea was they were just going to buy a bunch of mining units and then mine digital currency. And, like, again, I'm not sure how that has anything to do with their brand.
No,
and
apparently that is really weird.
Yeah, and then their shareholders who also then sold off a bunch of their shares. So their stock has been dipping down again. And now they came out with a statement saying they were just going to try to buy or partner with a current blockchain company that was already doing the mining. So it's
I really don't see the connection between mining and making an alcoholic beverage called a Long Island iced tea. That just sounds strange. Really odd.
I mean, they also make non-alcoholic beverages in the Long Island in the iced tea space. But yeah, like, why would a beverage company just decide they want to be a mining company?
I have no idea.
But again, with everything that was popular in December, suddenly you throw out blockchain and you watch your stock rise.
Yeah, so I mean, I do find it a bit strange that any kind of a beverage company would decide to go to mining. But equally, there's also been other news you've probably heard about with this whole Telegram announcement that they're going to launch some sort of an ICO, and they wanted to raise $500 million. You've heard about that, right?
I have, yeah. When I was at MIT last week, they were especially talking about it because they were really excited about the possibilities. The MIT researchers, they did at the end. They were like, unfortunately, we think Telegram's going to mess it up, but the possibility of what they're talking about is absolutely amazing. But tell me more about what you know about that.
Well, I mean, the thing for me is nobody needs to raise $500 million to run a business and to build a payments platform and to be competitive with WeChat. I mean, their white paper is a ridiculous 132 pages long. So it's not like people have time to read it. So it's going to be more about investing in hearsay because there isn't any way to get a quick read on exactly what they're trying to do. And I don't have time to read 132 pages and dissect it and figure it out. But, I mean, I just look at it from a very high-level perspective, having done a quick scan, which is, creating a payments platform. Well, that's not that hard because you can send money from wallet A to B pretty easily already. So just creating wallets and sending money isn't all that hard. And, and other features and functions, sure, there's lots of stuff they want to do. But does it warrant $500 million? I would say probably not. So I find it a little bit off-putting that they're aiming for that scale and size. And if it is that big, then questionably, who could pull that off? Who has that level of depth and experience in delivering large-scale IT programs to be able to pull something like that off that's that big? And then I would say you'd need to have partners like Microsoft or Apple or Google as technology partners, and you probably need some big integrators who know what they're doing. And then you might want to say, okay, we need 30 or 40 or 50 million to spend on our outsource partners. And that's my background, is having been in IT outsourcing for many years. So I struggle with why $500 million. I just find that to be a little bit off the mark for whatever it is. It'd be very hard to justify unless you're planning on launching rockets to Mars. And, oh, by the way, that's kind of the, SpaceX Elon Musk model. And he's not exactly going out asking for $500 million either. So he's just been building businesses and making money and doing that. So, unless they're planning on they're not launching, messages to Mars. I'm not sure why $500 million. I just for me, it's just too much money.
Yeah, that's a lot. I wonder if it's like the bragging factor, like what Overstock.com, when they announced their ICO, whatever it was back in November, that they were like, we will create the largest ICO. And they didn't say why they needed the money. They're just like, we're going to just win this ICO thing. I wonder if it's the same kind of marketing, bragging right, vibrato thing of like...
it's an interesting observation because I think everyone kind of feels like, they want to be in the top 5. You want to be with... Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, and Ripple in that kind of space. And if you want to be in the top 5, and Cardano now is in the top 5, or at least it is at the moment. So if you want to be in that sort of top 5 space, then you better go raise a heck of a lot of money so that your market cap is listed as being in that realm. And that's the only reason I could see people doing it, is just trying to be on the, the top 5 or the top 100 in market cap, because that's the prestigious page, right? If you go to CoinMarketCap and you look at all the coins, everybody wants to be on the top 100, and everyone's always looking for ways to unseat each other to get in there. So it's a really good reason to raise $500 million, so you can claim I'm in the top 20.
It definitely is. So are there other corporations that you've come across your desk that you're interested in that are integrating blockchain?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things going on in banking, which I find interesting. I like what Ripple's doing generally, although they're a startup that's kind of become very significant in the banking space. But in terms of established companies, there's nothing else that comes to mind right at the off the top of my head. I mean, there's always, every day I hear of something going on. But in terms of like the most interesting ones, I just think, tracking things like what, the airline industry is starting to do, and what we're starting to see in other industry sectors across advertising, financial services. I mean, sooner or later, some of the banks themselves are going to end up saying that they're going to do something more significant in blockchain. And it's not necessarily going to be in the smart contract space. They'll probably do something themselves. I mean, IBM does a lot of stuff now as, we'll call it a centralized version of a blockchain with permissioning. But they're doing a lot of, projects out there, implementing things for companies. So That's kind of the other way around, looking at it from the implementation side rather than companies announcing that they're, taking their business to blockchain. But, I think we're going to start to see some other ones that are real significant names soon. And that'll be interesting. I know you were going to mention one about the triple X industry. I think there was something that came across that you spotted that is completely off-piste from a normal mainstream business, but needless to say, a rather interesting way to round off the episode.
Right.
Not like I'm going to put you under any pressure today, but,
No, none whatsoever. It's a part of my other just seeing what's happening in the blockchain. And so there was a Forbes piece about this company named Intimate.io. And they're out of Australia, and it's a cryptocurrency company focused on the adult and what they call sex tech industry. And they want to make it safer, which is, it's definitely a booming business, with like Pornhub
there was no
leading
pun
the charge
intended
and
when you
everything.
said it's a booming industry, right? I know you really didn't mean it like that. So just keep going,
Not at all. I don't take in puns. I was trying to be dead and serious. So yeah, that's what they're attempting to do. And they have a female CEO, which I think is also awesome. Like it's great to see more women working in tech and blockchain companies.
I agree with you. Absolutely good.
Yeah,
I love that.
This is like an industry that she's been a part of, and she cares about it so much because she works in it that she wants to make it better. And they're focusing on a couple different things, privacy being one of them, payment platforms. So that the performer can speak directly to their constituents directly and take payments in a safe, reliable way. And so they're less dependent on what's happening with, various websites, right. But also like copyright reasons. So my other podcast, I interviewed an adult film star about her business model, and she spends most of her money hiring lawyers to go after copyright infringement. Like that's what she spends most of her time. And so this could be a big helping point with that, wherein the performers themselves own the rights to their own body of work and then can sell it directly to the people who want to see that and don't have to worry about other pirated sites picking up that information and running with it.
Interesting. So it's actually turned into kind of a digital rights episode tonight or today, just because everything we've been talking about kind of falls into this whole space of how to manage your rights, whether it's your digital rights to, air mile points or to your privacy or your photographs. So, that's going to be a big area in blockchain, and certainly, just managing your own private data and deciding what gets distributed and what doesn't. There's lots of companies beginning to move into that space too. I won't be surprised if we start to see some government agencies start to move in that space as well, or even insurance companies or healthcare companies or medical record companies, because it's really important. So it's slightly off track from your topic, which was probably more interesting than medical records, but needless to say, that's really, really interesting what they're doing. On a separate note, you did mention your other podcast, so why don't you just give our listeners an opportunity to just quickly tell everybody about your other podcast?
Sure. So I run a podcast called Advance Your Art, and it is focused on the connection between art and entrepreneurship. And every week I interview various artists and creative entrepreneurs who have kind of figured out that process of their careers on their own, because unfortunately the education system does a really poor job of educating artists on that. So I have people from all different walks of life, and actually I have a couple of some Bitcoin and cryptocurrency enthusiasts who are trying to work on the creative side of it.
Very cool.
Coming up in a few weeks. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I must admit, I need to go subscribe to your podcast. Shame on me.
Oh, it's all right. You're a busy guy.
No, well, so are you. And I appreciate the time that we spend together. It's always a lot of fun. So I think, what I want to just to conclude today is just to say that, I think everyone should just keep an eye out for, there's a lot of cool companies out there that are established, real companies that are going to move to blockchain. Some of them, as you mentioned, Yuri, will be companies that just kind of say they're doing it, but actually haven't got any plan behind it. But I think some of the bigger ones will start to move into that space. And because they're authentic companies and they're legitimate, that would hopefully give us more reason to believe that they're going to have a good solution. But like always, we need to be a little bit diligent in our research with them and make sure that they understand what it is they're launching, because many of us are already in crypto. We understand how it works, and we just need to make sure that we do a sanity check on what they're launching and does it actually make sense, or is it just a shot in the dark and a guess without actually knowing anything. So it's going to be interesting times for the next 6 months to a year between existing companies go out there on the one hand and other crypto companies that potentially get acquired. I think it's going to be a real interesting time over the next 6 months to a year.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I'm hoping that there are more companies, let's say more like Kodak, who actually have a real reason, and less companies like Long Island Blockchain, who just say, hey, it's cool, and watch our stock rise for no particular reason.
Lost Island Blockchain.
Yes, definitely.
Sorry for that, guys out there. If you've heard the episode, I apologize, but we need to help you guys get your strategy straight on this one. Anyway, So listen, next week, I think we should talk about tokens, token economy. I'd like to kind of cover it in 3 parts because I think, kind of related to what we've been talking about today about companies launching projects. Of course, it's really important to understand what are tokens and coins, how do they work, what does it mean when a company is selling their tokens, and how is it structured, what does a token model look like, and of course, what's a token economy. So that's a really interesting aspect of the whole token piece as well. So next week we'll just get into it and dig in and talk about tokens and coins and how they work, how they're used, looking at currency versus securities to some degree, and just looking at how the token models are designed, just to give people a real good flavor of, how that relates to what these companies are trying to do. And thank you everyone for listening today to the Coin Chat. Tune in next week, as I said, where we talk about tokens, token economies, and cryptocurrency coins. To the moon. Until next time.